I entitled this "You Are You," and uh, I started to write this a couple days ago, and there were a couple things that changed the tenor of what I was going to talk about. And the big thing was last night. Um, I on the Facebook feed of this church, Rector Mike Kinman at All Saints in Pasadena relayed that earlier this week, two threats were made against the church for this coming Sunday.
Mm.
One was that there was a bomb placed at the front of the church that would be detonated during Sunday worship, and the other that someone would come to Sunday worship and use a gun to, quote unquote, kill the pastor of the All Saints LGBTQ ministry church. So that news should make it clear that hate is still very much alive in our time, and that, like all forms of hate, it's held up by the twin pillars of fear and ignorance. And I know that all of us here send our thoughts and healing wishes to our extended All Saints family, and more importantly, are ready to stand shoulder to shoulder with them in any way possible. So, having Richard as a guest here today got me thinking of how my perspective on orientation and empathy was formed when I was very young. So with your indulgence, I wanted to talk about a very important person in my life. Growing up in Pico Rivera, close to East LA adjacent, I was ensconced right in the middle of 60s era Chicano machismo culture, right? And in it, gay kids were ostracized in school, and memories of those scars were the impetus for them to leave the neighborhood and go find their own places of inclusion and acceptance. And I thought it was always so sad when we would have, reunions of our class, and so many of the kids that I know that were struggling in school just didn't have any ties to anybody in school anymore because of things like that. And I never felt comfortable picking on kids. I was a chubby, asthmatic kid when I was young, so I was a target. And it took my dad's encouragement to play Little League Baseball and other sports to realize how much enjoyment and confidence I took from it. And I know Richard and I have a shared love of the Dodgers, so that helped get me onto the playing field and push through any awkwardness that I had. And as I think back, there was another reason I didn't pick on other kids, especially those struggling with their orientation and acceptance. My grandmother had a house in East LA and lived there for many years. And whenever our family would visit, I would look forward to speaking with my Uncle Ray. He was always kind, encouraged me to follow my interest in science, and inviting me to visit his office at MGM, where he oversaw the computer analytics department. And this was in the era when the most sophisticated technology that was being used were those paper punch cards that they would insert. So he understood my passion for music as well, and being able to listen to artists like Barbra Streisand, Nancy Wilson, and Carmen McRae on their huge Admiral Council stereo kept feeding that passion. And being able to listen to other artists like Lola Beltran made me understand the connections between my heritage and the love of music that I had overall. He was supportive in helping me get into college, and when I got to Chapman University, I started to realize something, that whenever Ray would visit, he would bring a buddy around to visit as well, and he always had male roommates. It started to dawn on me that Ray was gay, and that he was quietly living his authentic life as truthfully as he could, and was maybe an unconscious inkling that Ray was gay that gave me the empathy to never feel like I can join in on the shunning and jokes of kids that were dealing with their orientation growing up. And sometimes I spoke up even louder, like a very awkward instance at a party in East LA, when I stood up for someone who was being bullied by someone in the Army in the don't ask, don't tell era. Just myself and other people, we just could not stand back and let that happen anymore. And I'm a very lucky person for a lot of reasons. One in particular is because I have a lot of friends and family that, whether they realize it or not, exude a quiet dignity and bravery just by being themselves. You push me to be better because you are living your truth in a sometimes hostile world and exhibit a strength and honesty, living your everyday lives that's rare for anyone to have to call on day after day. Whether you know it or not, it inspires me to be more honest, speak my convictions, and relate more truthfully to others. And this program today gives me the opportunity to thank my Uncle Ray, Richard, and all the other people I've known for their example. And in the words of Dr. Seuss, today you are you that is truer than true. There is no one alive who is youer than you. So thank you for the inspiration.
Thank you, Rick, for that beautiful reflection. You never disappoint. You're always so, I don't know how to describe it, but there's a beautiful sensitivity and caring in your messages that I really appreciate. Anyone have any?
Is my friend too.
Yeah. Anyone else have any comments you want to make before we turn to our speaker?
Thank you. Thank you, Rick.
Oh, Ruby.
Thank you.
I will change your name on the thing here. That's a technical term, the thing. All right.
All right, great. I'm excited about hearing Richard Zaldivar. I don't know him well. Is there someone who could introduce him? That's great. Rick, would you do that, please?
Sure. So I think Richard and I think first met when I was working at Virgin Megastores, and we had a charity arm and activist arm called Virgin Unite, where all of the North American Virgin companies would get together and do different programs. So the folks at Virgin Mobile and Virgin Atlantic, it wasn't Virgin Interstellar or whatever they were doing, or no balloon rides, but they were doing things to help in the not only in the global area but in the community as well. So I was introduced to Richard's work, I think, through my old boss, Jerry Suarez. I say that old as in how long ago, not necessarily that he's as ancient as he actually is, but I'll send this to them too. We did a lot of work with the programs at the Wall Las Memorias, and it was a great example of being ensconced in a community and reaching out to create opportunities and create resources for people that did not have them readily available to them. And they found a really great partner with other organizations, including the Dodge organization. There was I think one of the first parks in organizations to have a LGBTQ day. And it was really, really inspiring how he was able to get a lot of the LA community together. So that's Richard Zaldivar.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Rick, and good morning to all of you, wherever you're at. I happen to be in our den in an apartment on Bunker Hill in downtown Los Angeles, and trying to wake up with my third cup of coffee, just to be honest. I want to first thank you, Rick. I've never told you this, but reflecting, December 1st, our organization is going to be 30 years old. And there are a number of people that I remember and I appreciate through my entire stance as a founder and executive director of the Wall Las Memorias, and one of them's you. I'll never forget your support early on. And when you couldn't find the support, you always helped us and guided me. You didn't know that, but your calm personality, your loving and compassionate approach to our organization and our struggle early on really gave me the food to continue. Starting a nonprofit organization is not easy, especially when you have a vision that most people don't understand or are afraid to relate to. But you were there at the beginning, so thank you, and I deeply appreciate it. So it's great to be here with all of you this morning. You know, I want to talk a little bit about where I've come from and how I've incorporated my faith into the work that I do and what we've done in our community. I am a middle child of three of us. My father was born in Zacatecas, Mexico. My mother was born in Nogales, Arizona. And they met and dated at Lincoln High School in Lincoln Heights. So my family, both sides of my family are from Lincoln Heights. I was born and raised in Hillside Village, which is in El Sereno. We went to Catholic school, All Saints School in El Sereno, and later on graduated from Cathedral High School in Chinatown, where my older brother, my younger brother, and my uncle, and seems a lot of other family members went to. You know, there's a lot of similarities, Rick. You know, I was the doctors warned my mother not to take my tonsils out. My dad wanted my tonsils out. I don't know why. And they took my tonsils and my adenoids out. And they had told me that I would develop asthma. And so I did after they took it out. And I was very sick for a number of years. And my mom took me to a doctor, Dr. Rodriguez in Lincoln Heights, right on Daly Street. And my grandfather carried me in, and I was near my deathbed because back then there were no medications for asthma. No one really knew how to treat it. And so I was blessed. The doctor said, don't give Richard any cold drinks, no ice cream. He is not to be chilled. And if you do this, when he's a teenager, he outgrow it. And so my mother pampered me. She took care of me, and I followed the doctor's advice. And sure enough, I grew asthma when I was about 13 years old. So except for nowadays, over the summer, during the pandemic, I ate a lot of ice cream. And you could tell I actually did because I could. And there was nothing to do during the pandemic. But growing up as a middle child and a sick child, you know, I struggled in school. I was a C average student. I was very quiet and very shy, very timid, very afraid of who I was or who I was supposed to be. When I was young, I wanted to be a priest because I had an incredible experience at my parish. They were Irish priests and they were amazing. And I had Dominican nuns and they were awesome. Then I went to Cathedral. I had incredible Christian brothers that I still have a relationship with one of them who's up north in retirement home. And so I grew in the east side of Los Angeles, northeast side of Los Angeles. And, you know, I didn't know what I wanted to be, but I also knew there was something wrong with me. In those days, there was something wrong. I couldn't pinpoint it. And so as I grew up, I got involved in local community. It was, 1969, 1970, that I organized my first community meeting around drugs at the All Saints Parish. And I invited, some of you can remember, some of you don't. I invited Senator David Roberti, Congressman Roy Ball, and Councilman Art Snyder to this meeting. And the ones who showed up was Dave Roberti and Councilman Snyder. And from that meeting, we had about 55, 60 people at the parish hall. It was a great meeting, and I wanted to do something for the community. And so from that, I I continued and I started conversations with our local councilman Snyder at the time. He was a focus of a recall attempt because he wasn't Latino or Chicano, and it was more of a Latino district. So they tried to recall him, and I thought that was not okay. And so I got involved in supporting him, and I oversaw the El Sereno community. I was their chair campaign, and we won a huge victory throughout the 14th district. I served with the councilman for about 14, 15 years. It was the best experience of my life. We did the greatest things in that community that any councilman has ever done, with new parks, new lights, new sewer systems, new senior citizen centers. It was just a great experience. But, you know, I was also not comfortable with myself. I was climbing up the ladder. I got a chance. I was invited to work in the Jimmy Carter White House. I wasn't a Jimmy Carter supporter. I was a Ted Kennedy supporter. And so I couldn't go against my grain. But I was also afraid. It's like, what do I have to do with the White House? What can I do? And so I continued to work for the city. I went on to work in political campaigns. I was a screen extra, I was a union member, a board member of the SEG at the time, and they no longer exist. And it was about 1989 that my best friend shared that he had HIV. And during that time, I also was bottoming out from alcoholism. And so during all those years, I lost contact with my faith. Because I was afraid, I was ashamed to be open to who I was. And I perceived there was no place at a church for me to sit in. Although I would go to church often, not weekly, I would always sit at the back of the church. And so when my best friend shared with me that he was positive, he wasn't sick of AIDS. He had HIV. What he was sick was the bigotry and the stigma that he was dealing with. That hurt me so much. And I still get emotional over that because no human person should feel so degraded or self-degrading of himself or herself because of HIV. And so I wanted to give back to the community, but I had given back so many years, 16 years on the east side of Los Angeles, particularly in El Sereno, where there's a flagpole there. My name's at the bottom of that pole because I was responsible for getting that flagpole there. I was the honorary mayor. But I never gave back to my queer community, my Latino LGBTQ community. And so during that period of time, there were services, a limited amount of services to our community, our Latino community, but most of the services were conducted in Spanish. Because back in those days, and to some degree today, when you say Latino, the powers that be will look at you and say, well, I guess you speak Spanish. Well, there was a lot of people who the primary language was not Spanish, it was English. So we weren't getting our full services. And I remember a West Side AIDS organization telling me, when are you Latinos going to get your act together? Because so many of you people are dying. And, that really hit me. As you can tell, I still have that in the back of my mind. So I decided I wanted to do something in the local community. And originally I thought I would build a wall panel with a Virgin Mary in the middle and then 200 names of people who died of AIDS. And I got that idea from the Cholitos on the East Side, which I was able to supervise a summer youth employment program throughout the 14th district. And one of my favorite programs was in Happy Valley, where the local Cholitos painted the most incredible murals. And they always had a religious connotation. There was always the Virgin Mary or the Virgen de Guadalupe, right? There's one that still stands there today on Sierra Drive in Happy Valley. And every feast day of the Virgin de Guadalupe, or if somebody wants to have or pay homage, they go and they light candles and they share their flowers. So I thought, let's do this and let's create something in the community so that there's ownership. So I shared that idea in September of 1993. And my good friend, who became my first board chair, was Father John Santillan, who was at that time Our Lady Help of Christians. I've known him and his family for years. And I talked to him about the project, and he says, I want to help you. And so there was a small group of folks, and they says, well, we believe in your dream. We will support you. Long story short, our organization was founded on December the 1st, 1993. And by that time, we already had a schematic of how the monument was going to be built, because David Angelo was the architect, and he created the drawing for us. And so, but I knew it was going to be a struggle. I had never raised money for anything. And so all I had was a dream, and I had the ability to organize. And so we organized the community. But I used my community contacts to be able to get support. And so it wasn't easy. The first group of folks that I thought was so important were the Mothers of East LA, of Santa Isabel. Because in my days at Cathedral with Councilman Snyder, we saved Cathedral because there was an attempt to sell the property by those days. The Archdiocese was planning to sell the property to investors in China, and they were going to build condos on that property. And when Brother James found out about it, he called me. I then called Art Snyder at home on a Sunday afternoon. He says, we need to do something about that. So we created this massive movement called Save Cathedral. And it included another family friend, Henry Alfaro, and a number of other folks. And our good friend, Gabriel Gutierrez, who's a teacher now at CSUN, but who was a student body president at Cathedral. And we got the motion approved in the council to declare the cathedral in monument status, which then they could sell the property, the Archdiocese could sell the property, but they couldn't build on it. Nobody could build on it. And so we saved Cathedral. Well, Gabriel's mom is Juanita Gutierrez, the president of the Mothers of East LA, an environmental group, and they did incredible work. So I went to her and I sat with her and brought Ron Castillo, one of our board members who was living with AIDS at the time, and we asked them for their formal support. And it was a great meeting. There were 9 women, all Spanish speaking, sitting around the dining room table. And we gave our presentation, and we saw these women going like this, nodding their head. And I said, oh my God, they're going to be so homophobic. And the oldest one, the most traditional, raised her hand and says, I know about AIDS because I watch Cristina all the time. The Cristina show on KMEX, Channel 34. And so they endorsed us. And they said, anything you need, we represent 36 parishes on the east side, let us know. And they got involved and they supported us. And that allowed us to leverage that support into gaining traction to building the monument. So the AIDS monument, we got support from then Assemblyman Gil Cedillo in the state of California through a member's request. We got money from the state. We got money from the city through then Mayor James Hahn. And we built the first AIDS monument ever in the nation there at Lincoln Park. And that was dedicated in 2004. In the interim, we started expanding our work. So we do a lot of HIV prevention, we do testing, we do substance use disorder prevention in a number of areas in Los Angeles County. We do work around the LGBTQ, transitional age youth, working around mental health prevention. We're involved in cancer research and how it impacts LGBTQ and Latino communities. We're working with Cedars and some other folks on that. And our organization has grown substantially. But a few years ago, the monument needed a facelift. And so we were able to get support again from Mr. Cedillo, who was a councilman at the time, and Mayor Garcetti. And we got support from our good friend, Supervisor Hilda Solis, and we renovated the AIDS monument. And so it is breathtaking today. It's at Lincoln Park. Our organization has expanded its staff. We have approximately 28 people on board, and we have to add another 6 or 7 by July 1, which is not easy in this economy. And so it is going really well, and we're doing incredible work. And as I come here to you today in reflection, December 1st of this year, we'll be celebrating 30 years as a community-based organization. We've done a lot of work to partner with causes and support various unions that we have good relationships with, and causes up and down the state. We've also been supportive of national platforms, whether it was HIV or pharmaceutical issues, whether it was hepatitis C, and of course, did a lot of work recently around the crystal meth and other drugs. We have been able to mentor a lot of young people through the process, how to organize a community, how to bring people in. And so, in reflection of my 30 years and prior to my 30 years coming out of the closet, I am very indebted to my God for allowing me to see the light, to being able to listen. And for me, my lessons I have learned through life is that, we cannot always talk. For me, prayer is not about praying or talking to someone. It's listening and getting the guidance. I've been very fortunate in my life to be able to provide assistance to community. Back in 2000, I forgot to say, back in 2000, we got involved in helping save an AIDS hospice in Tijuana. And it's a long story, and it will take longer than the time that I have here today. But in the year 2000, they renamed the AIDS hospice after us. It's called Las Memorias. And it's off a dirt road between Tijuana and Tecate. And back then, it had about 5 patients. Now it has about 160 patients, but about half of them are in a drug treatment program, and the other half of those folks have AIDS. And we provide support to them as much as we can. My staff members have beer busts. They go and they raise money, which is incredible because it's important for younger people to learn how to give back to community. We also provide raise money to buy supplies for them, which they're always in need of. And it's just a great place to be. But in reflection, nowadays we talk a lot about social justice and the need to address the needs of those who are hungry, whether it's actually for food or for spirituality or self-identity. I've been very blessed to be able to realize that social justice begins with me. It begins with us. And that means to me is that I get to be that child that God made me to be, and to be able to live that fully, confidently, and to learn how to respect myself and who I am as a person, and which allows me to respect others, whether I differ on their thoughts or their opinions or their belief systems. And so my relationship with God has been amazing. And as a recovering alcoholic, I have now 34 years of sobriety. And about 10 years ago, God has always been good to me, and I have a great relationship. But 10 years ago, I got tired of just being a gay man who was always dating, trying to find that special person. And so I actually remember praying to God. It was February, during the month of February. I said, I want to take care of myself. I need a companion. And later that year, I met my fiance. And so, who happens to be a spiritual life coach. We go to mass every Sunday at the cathedral, downtown LA. We sit in the front because it's important for me as a community leader to show others that we don't take the back seat anymore, that we're in the front and we get to model. And after Mass, we've had a lot of situations where people will come up to us and ask us, well, are you gay? And it says, yes. And it says, well, I need help with my family. My husband doesn't accept it, or this one woman came up and said, we see you here every Sunday and you guys look so happy together. But my son wants to bring his boyfriend to church with us, but my husband doesn't know and he'll be very upset. And she's crying, right? And so all we can do is support her, and walk her through some steps. But I think in our lives that in my journey, it's important for me to accept the pain and the challenges, but also to accept the truths and the love that God has given me so I can give to others. And know that in our lives that there is justice, but we have to find it within ourselves first, so that we can then model to other members of community. And lastly, I think nowadays where there is so much extremism on both sides of the political spectrum, that so many times people are afraid just to be who you are, And I find that in my community, whether you're trans or you're bi or you're non-binary, if you're a person of color going to a place that you feel that you're not welcomed, that's the pain we're suffering today. And that pain leads to HIV and other diseases. So our job in the community is to help guide our folks in the direction. And I always say that our job on this earth is to find out why God has put us here. And then once we get there, to live our life to the fullest. So I want to thank you all for being patient and listening to me so early in the morning with only 2 cups of coffee. I'm not, as a recovering alcoholic, I'm not a morning person. Catch me about 3:30 in the afternoon when I really wake up. But I want to thank you for allowing me to be part of your program, and I appreciate it. And I'm open to any questions that you may have.
Sounds good. What I'm going to do right now is I am going to share my screen if I can, because I think that maybe some people have not had a chance to see the monument.
Wow.
And this is one photo that I found of the monument. That's just part of it. And there's some really great programs. Of course, December 1st, they always have something going. I think there's the Posada too. And there are other community involvements as well. There's a men's group, there's different things. And in the chat, I put one event that's coming up on, I think, the 19th, which is the women's event. And there are probably other things that, well, one question that I had is there anything that is coming up that you're working on, either legislatively or that this group can lend its support to for you guys?
Well, and I apologize for not sending you the information for uploading. Let me just mention a few things. Everyone, and I'll send it to you, Rick, if you can send it out to the team. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and we are planning an event at our Boyle Heights Hub, which is at 2020 East First Street, outside, and we're honoring our women, especially during the period of COVID-19, and having conversations about how to address mental health in our community. We have invited Beatriz Adriana, who's a Mexican film star. She's going to be joining us because she's gone through some stuff. We may have another surprise artist joining us that day. And we're going to come together and talk about mental health, our own experiences. We will have some breakout rooms. We'll hear from some of the leaders, celebrities in our community. We're going to do a sound bath for all the folks in attendance. There, we're going to have dinner and mariachi music. Mariachi Los Divas will be performing at our space. So you all are invited, and it's not just for women. And then in June, we're having one for the LGBTQ community. And so I'm working on some folks to attend that. And it's important for us to do that during this period of time. Anytime, as we're seeing so many problems around depression and anxiety, and we see suicide increasing in our community, that we talk about issues that we don't like talking about. There's such a stigma around mental health. So that will be important. Those two events, I'd like to share that information, and you can send it around the group here. Legislation, we're not working on anything yet. We've been very active in the past. So statewide efforts have, some state leaders in Sacramento have wanted to extend the drinking hours at bars from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. And we have been a huge leader with other organizations and a statewide organization called Alcohol Justice to fight back. And we won 3 times in our organizing skills up and down the state of California. It was just a bad idea, especially when you see so many liquor entities in people of color communities. And so that's really about it. We also just finished the Act Now Against Meth coalition. We created this years ago, and we brought it back during the height of the pandemic because we saw such an increase of crystal meth in our community. So we formed a coalition of 22 organizations, including UCLA. And we met during the pandemic, all virtual. And we had town halls. And one town hall, we had about 130 people there attend. And we came up with a platform, LA County platform. And this platform was 32 recommendations that the core of the coalition came up with to present to LA County Board of Supervisors. And that platform, those 32 recommendations were voted on by the community and they were approved. We submitted to the Board of Supervisors. The supervisor Solis and Holly Mitchell, took that in and said, we're sending this to departments. Now there's a response that we're going to be reviewing where those offices to see where they're at in addressing crystal meth. And so I'm proud to say that, May 15th, the U.S. Academy of Medicine will be announcing that the Act Now Against Meth coalition is a promising practice for community engagement around public health. So I'm really proud of that. But I think it's important for community to be engaged, to learn how do you change systems. Many times you hear people trying to change a system from without, but we always need to change a system from within, because that's where we get the traction to really creating change. But I'll send you that information so you can share it among the familia here.
That sounds good. Anthony, I didn't want to step on your toes and
It's okay. I don't feel stepped on.
Good.
Yeah, I think we're co-doing this today. So any other questions that people have?
I think Rosa had one.
Okay. Oh, yeah, Rosa.
Yeah. Hi, good morning, Richard. It's so good to see you. So I wanted to know, do you have connections with Latino Equality Alliance and the LGBTQ Community Center in Boyle Heights? It's on Clarence Street.
Well, Eddie Martinez, who's a director there, was my right-hand man for 18 years. And
Okay.
he's my brother. So we're very close. I spent many years mentoring him, and he tells everybody that I'm his mentor. And so we have connections with Leah, and we work with other community-based organizations too.
Okay, good. Because there at Dolores Mission, what we're trying to do now is to respond to one of the top 3 points brought up by that community, and that was to have to be a more welcoming and inclusive community for the LGBTQ community, especially the youth are saying this needs to happen. We can't continue making people feel unwelcome or actually not, being welcoming at all. And so we're taking baby steps. I've been encouraging them to contact Eddie, also to use the A La Familia curriculum from the Human Rights Campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And so thank you very much. I'm glad to hear that you're doing all of this because it's really needed.
And also, what we also do, we're funded by the county mental health department to provide toolkit trainings.
Okay.
So we could do a toolkit training there at the Dolores Mission, and that's culturally appropriate. And basically, it talks about what LGBTQ is. How do you create safe spaces? How do you talk to people?
Good.
So
Yeah.
we've done this for a number of years. We're going to be doing that through to Molina Healthcare, to their physicians. So we could do that there.
Okay, because I think the staff is really where it needs to start. They're kind of like, how do we talk to people? How do we talk to parents, which is one set of people that we talk to, and then the youth. You know, I mean, you're not communicating with each one in the same way. So it's Molina Healthcare, and I can get this through Wall Las Memorias.
Yes, I just sent you my email.
Okay.
I could connect you to Paul in our office, and they're
Cool.
doing trainings right now in the community.
Okay, very good. Very, very good. And one last thing, and then
Yes, ma'am.
that's it. What you say about being in organizations within, especially dealing with mental health right now after COVID. I have a daughter, she's the director in charge at Costello Recreation Center. They're having a great deal of difficulty getting that pool open again. That pool means a lot to that community, especially with they don't have access to nearby pools that are for the public. The closest one is Pecan Park. And Pecan Park's having problems with increased gang activity.
Yeah.
So not everyone's going to go there. And she's been trying and trying. She's getting nowhere trying to get the funding that's needed for that pool. She has a park advisory board, but I'm sure they could use some training as to how do you maneuver with the city council? How do you maneuver with funds? How do you do it so that maybe you'll get the funds, but you don't realize there was another meeting after that where it got redistributed somewhere else?
You know, have her contact me too.
Okay.
I kind of know how to work the system and how to talk to people, being in the city council for 15 years as a deputy. But I could see what I could do to help and maybe point it either in the right direction or talk to some folks. There's a new director, a new general manager over at Rec and Parks, and he is really, really good with community. So send me, let's connect.
I'll do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rosa.
Well, I see that Sophia's hand is up, but I just want to say, Richard, how much I've appreciated your talk today. You are amazing, and the work you're doing is so important. I have some questions, but I want to hear Sophia first.
Thank you, Anthony.
Good morning, Richard. I just want to thank you for, holding space and for saving lives. You offer a space where individuals who may be suffering go and have a safe space to speak when they may want to take their own lives.
Yeah.
So thank you for saving lives.
Thank you so much, Sophia.
And that's just so beautiful. And I've seen it and I witnessed it. Also to have a space where individuals can go, feel safe. And when they take their tests, they have a community when they get those results, and to feel welcomed. And so many people are alone or deal with the devastation if they do test positive, where to go to. And you've allowed the community to have that space. So once again, thank you for saving lives. And I just wanted to say too that it's good to hear that Dolores Mission is now opening, moving beyond where they were when I worked at Proyecto Pastoral. And I had to challenge the case managers because they refused to listen to youth that were dealing, with their orientation, and we challenged them. And it was so painful. It was so painful that they ran people out because we were willing to rise up and say, you have to be inclusive. And excuse me, but they're paying you to do your job. And how dare you refuse to talk to our youth? So I want to thank you, and you brought up a lot of memories. And so Continue your work, and I'll be there at the event coming up. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you so much, Sophia. I'll just add one more piece to that, because we talked about HIV/AIDS and the devastation that we all experienced throughout the world, and we're still experiencing other parts of the world much graver than others. But I think there is the death of a person, the death of the physical part of a person, where they no longer exist on earth. And then there's the death of the spirit. And what's important to me is that it's important to feed the soul. It's important for the individual to be able to be self-nourishing so that they could flourish and be that star that they're supposed to be. And the bigotry and the homophobia and the transphobia that we see today is just as bad as shooting bombs in a foreign country. It's the same thing, except you're killing the soul, not the physical body. And so we all have a lot to work to do. But thank you so much for your kind words, Sophia.
Okay, Carol Francis, you're next.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate the fact that you speak of good experiences with nuns and priests growing up, because I've had that too. And sometimes I just say, well, I was raised in a Catholic school, and somebody automatically says, oh, that's too bad. But yeah, I'm hoping you could talk about the intersectionality between the struggle against racism and the struggle against homophobia, because you are in a community that experiences both, and any commonality in work you've been able to do outside of the Chicano Latino community with LGBTQ groups in other communities.
Wow, you sound like you could be Diane Sawyer with such a great question.
Thank you.
I don't know if I can answer that, but let me try. Okay. When we talk about racism and homophobia, obviously, what I practice and what I've learned through my life is if you're bigoted in one area, you're going to be bigoted in another area, right? And we all have this bigotry towards something. Either you're too short, you're too small, you're too tall, your skin is too light or too dark. And so I have learned personally over the years to really try to, and I share this with my staff. I'm like the father of the group. And sometimes literally I feel like they're all children to me. Is that my soul needs to look at the other person's soul, right? And I've learned that. But it was very painful. It was a very painful learning process. When we first launched our organization, nobody on the West Side, the white gay community did not support us. Did not support us. And my Latino community didn't know how to support. I never got homophobia as we were working the process out, but I had institutional homophobia that I had to deal with. When we got close to building the monument, Councilman Ed Reyes was a councilman. And we had to he put us through the ringer through a number of community meetings where we had about 5 people constantly chasing us and going after us. And so after a huge community meeting at the Lincoln Heights Senior Citizen Center, where over 300 people were there, we had to be escorted out by police because there were death threats on us. So when it came to the final approval, Councilman Ed Reyes could not raise his hand to make the motion. He had to go to the councilman next door, who at that time was Nick Pacheco, who raised his hand and made the motion for approval of the monument. And so we had to deal with that. but we also had to deal with the racism on the West Side, and it's still a struggle. There's still racism out there. But I think for me, my learning process and what I try to mentor to others is that we need to focus on where we're going in the future, not to be held back by the bigotries of society or anybody in the community. And again, if we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, we will succeed. And we will then also be able to teach. Just recently, about 6 years ago, there was a lot of news in West Hollywood that they were building a monument. It was going to be the first AIDS monument ever. Well, we had been around for a long time. And many people got really upset, like people in the city, people in the community. How dare they? And so, I actually met with them and they apologized. And I said, I understand. That's fine. Thank you. But it didn't hold us back from doing what we had to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's important that we just move forward in finding ways to bridging other community members, but also realize that even when we're silent, that our actions mean that we're teaching people, right? And so I never went in the press. I never fought back on any kind of bigotry. When we were building the monument, we had those 5 homophobic folks after us. I got called by Oliver North's radio program to come on and explain why we're building an AIDS monument in a public park. And I refused to participate in that, that circus. And so I just had to keep focused. So I think all of us, we must accept the fact that we're teachers. Mm-hmm. And as a teacher in school, I remember never took sides, they just taught. So I continue to practice that way, and I teach my staff that we move forward, accepting everybody, even political thoughts where we sometimes differ. It's not the thought, it's not the idea, it's the soul of the person that we need to connect with.
Mm.
Did I answer the question?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I don't see any other hands, so I'm going to ask a question, but I do have one for Rick, if he's still there. I heard him mention All Saints. Is that All Saints in Pasadena that received threats? It's in Pasadena. Yeah, that's unbelievable. So, Richard, I'm really impressed by your deep spirituality and your commitment to the church. I'm so happy that you're able to go to church with your partner and sit in the front row. That's progress. But I'm just wondering how you feel about the church as a whole, and also specifically what the church is doing, the Catholic Church, with respect to the needs of LGBTQ community. Do you find that you get support, or is there some pushback? What's your relationship with the Catholic Church right now with this issue?
You want my honest, transparent response?
Yeah. I would expect no less from you.
I am Mexican American. I'm Latino. I'm Roman Catholic. Mm-hmm. And I've gotten this question a number of times. My partner's Filipino. We go to mass, as I said, to the cathedral. And I've been asked a number of times, how could you be gay and Catholic? And, I share with them the story. Back in 1978, there was a Democratic mini conference. I was very active in the Democratic Party, national conventions, and I was in Memphis, Tennessee. And I was still in the closet. And there was a group of gay folks that I knew as friends, and they were trying to circulate a petition among the delegates to create a gay caucus, because there was no such thing. And so I remember sitting in the lobby, and there was a Chicano caucus meeting going on. And Dolores Huerta came up to me and says, "What are you doing here?" And I says, "I'm helping Rick Zaslaw circulate a petition for a gay caucus." Because that's not your concern, your issue. get into the Chicano meeting because we need people at the caucus. And, it's like, the reality is there was a time where it was illegal to walk, well, not illegal. It was not legal to walk into a gay bar or walk down the street holding hands. God forbid having sex with another man, right? That was all past us. And we had to fight for our rights, right? And in a democracy like ours, we always have to fight for rights. Because in freedom, we always have to confront bigotry and elitism and classism. And so I believe that within any setting, including the Catholic Church, that we just have to be organizers. And one thing to be an organizer is to be a member and to spread the word, or to be that example. And so I believe my church is changing. It's going to be slow, just like it was slow in the United States until gay rights came aboard and we changed the laws in Congress. But it didn't happen until congressional districts were organized and lobbied and things started to happen. It didn't happen until Rock Hudson came out that he was full-blown AIDS. I tell people that if it hadn't been for all those people who died of AIDS, we wouldn't be where we're at in gay rights today. They were our martyrs. And so I have a tremendous respect for and love for our Pope. Some of the archbishops, are way behind time and shouldn't be where they're at. We have some good cardinals out there. I wish we had a good cardinal in Los Angeles who is progressive. And I have no problem saying that. We have a great cardinal in San Diego who we'd love to have him here in LA. We made steps, and we have incredible ministers and priests who are very understanding and very supportive, and then others who give support based upon lip service, because it's a PC thing to do. And so I just believe that we're all called to the same table, and there's enough room at the table, but I want more of my people to be there because they should be nourished as much as I have been. That's social justice for me. That's spiritual justice. I get emotional with that, but thank you for the question.
That's a great response. Thank you so much. You've been really helpful and honest.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Carol Francis.
Sorry for coming on a second time, but I felt when I hear people say, well, that homosexuality is a choice and people should not choose to be homosexual. I think the greatest argument against that is when you hear that the greatest percentage of children in middle school who commit suicide do so because they learn that they're gay. And obviously, people don't choose to be something that they are going to commit suicide for finding out that they are. And I'm wondering if you can talk about, you said that you knew something was, that you felt you were different, but you couldn't figure out what it was. Could you talk about that? Because I think that early recognition that there's something going on there is something that we all need to know more about. So if you'd be comfortable talking about that yourself.
I will. Thank you. I think I only can talk about my experience. Being my father served in the Second World War, but he was also in the war. He was a boxer, and he was very, very macho, and so I was raised on my dad's side of the family not to show your emotions or your feelings. So when you're raised in that manner, you cannot even think about your thoughts because they're dictated based upon environmental culture. My mom's side was very open, very loving. I had this culture clash, right? I can go to my mom's, I would kiss my grandfather's cheek, my uncles, we would hug. My dad's side, you wouldn't do that. Men would not, I was told men do not kiss men. So already now, the intimate part was closed down. What I wanted to express was shut down completely. I couldn't express a sign of love. And so it's how we're raised. You know, some is religious, but not necessarily. Many of it's cultural. How we're raised and how we're supposed to be portrayed at, and the fact that my mother wanted grandchildren, but she didn't harbor on it. My mom was cool, you know? And so I think it's really important that when we're talking about providing training to youth, and this has been, as an advocate, I've been advocating with mental health department and some other folks, even the statewide mental health, they need to provide training and support for the family and the adults. Because many times, if you look, and I'm only talking about my experience, the mother is the one who leads the family. And if she's getting pressure, or if she's feeling confined by the social cultural construct and her husband and the role he plays, then she doesn't know how to navigate her children or her actions. They need the training, they need support. And I think that's what's really important. So as a person of color, I know that we're built around family. And as I tell it many times, you know, in West Hollywood, you have a lot of gay people who move to West Hollywood, and they move from Arkansas and Kansas and Minnesota. And then you'll talk to them and they say, well, I'm here. And I said, well, are you out of the closet? Because no, not really. They don't need to know. I'm here. Latinos, we don't move, or we stay close to mom. And so it's important that the local neighborhoods are educated and guided through this entire process. So I think it's important when we're looking at our family structures and how we treat people, how we talk. How do we create a safe space at our dinner table as well as at the altar of any church? You know, unions, you know, at their decision making. You know, what I really get upset about is the PC of being gay. And you'll have a lot of people say, well, we have 2 seats for the gay community on this board, or we want to hear from the gay member. You know, that is disturbing to me, because you have a lot of people at the table who are not out of the closet, but maybe gay or bisexual. And I don't want to be a set aside. I don't want to be part of a quota system. God didn't make me that way. You're trying to put me into that box. Did I answer the question?
Yeah.
Oh, Richard, I wanted to say, since you talked about moms, I'm not sure if you know, but we lost Ernestina Montellanos to COVID. She was part of Las Madres de Las Memorias.
Sophia, you know, I've been wondering what happened to Ernestina. How long ago was that?
Less than a year ago. And I just wanted to let you know.
Sophia, my condolences to you. Thank you so much. Ernestina was one of the mothers who read about the idea of building a monument. And her son died of AIDS. And she helped launch a movement for mothers. And we had Mothers of the Wall, her and some other folks. You know, I saw these mothers. We just lost another woman, Angie Apodaca, who was another mother. She died last December. She would call me her son. And the monument served as a place for so many of these mothers who sought justice for their children, besides mourning them. the monument legitimized them. And I just thought about these words as I'm hearing your voice, Sophia. So my condolences, and I've always wondered, and I prayed for her. She was a feisty woman, and she was about justice, and she had beautiful glasses and her red hair. And so I don't forget. And so thank you for reminding me, and maybe we could talk later about her family members.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Well, I see Doc Ruby, your hand is up. You had a question?
Yes. Can you hear me? Okay. Yes. Thank you, Richard, so much for your presentation. And one of the things is I'm finding I work with different people. I have a woman now who has come out. Her wife used to call me and complain and everything, but they're not together now. But I'm finding that this woman is in the blame, and she's in the rage. She's not releasing compassion. Everything is wrong. And to support her, just like when I said, I'm thankful for what you're bringing to me, she came completely into anger management. So I'm not seeing people who are gay or straight into this section. And that's, for me, not important. What's important is everyone's human. And that being human is the love they have to show within them, whatever way it is. So in order to, and this is going on now with this woman, in order to support her into a straight line, when I say a straight line, a mental balance, what is it that I could do? And other people are complaining about this woman too. And it's, for me, it's not being gray or being whatever they call straight or gay or anything. It's about her anger and her humanity.
Wow. I don't know if I'm I could only, my immediate thoughts, Dr. Ruby, is I think the most important thing that we do with any person who's going through difficult times is not try to diagnose why they're going through that or diagnose them, but just simply love them. That's all we can do, because I think when a person is as angry as you're describing, it's basically is because maybe they're not loving themselves. They don't give themselves a credibility for a thought process, for a reasonable thought process. Try to figure out what's going on in their life. What I've done in the past is the ability to love them unconditionally and then have conversations where you get to share what you experience in your life and how you address that. And so if you find, and I've done this many times, whether it's someone with substance use or someone who's dealing with depression, I'm not going to go there and tell them that's not the way you should do it, or you should do this. I've shared with them my pain, what I went through when I struggled with alcoholism, when I suffered with depression. When I first got sober, I was, put on Prozac, and I was sent into psychotherapy, which was the best thing in my life. But I could share that with them and what it did for me. So I think mentoring and being that model would be helpful in a loving way. But there's not much more you can do. It's important for them to come back and ask, well, how did you do it? Well, if they ask that, then you get to tell them how you may have done that. Now, if you haven't had those experiences, then it's a little bit more difficult. So I would just say then you just learn to love them unconditionally. But if you've had some of those experiences, it's really important. This is what I went through. Just want to let you know, I don't want to get in your business, but This is how I went through it. And you talk about how deep it was, because a lot of these people don't realize that other people have traveled that same road that they have traveled. And they don't know, they're so much into their pain that they think they're the only ones have gone down that journey. But if they see somebody else who's gone down that same road and now has been able to change their life or the way they live their life, that's what's really important. I do that all the time, you know, with mental health. People will say, well, this is what I'm dealing with. This is my anxiety. I says, well, this is what I've done to address anxiety, blah, 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 blah. And then they'll ask me questions. Well, where did you go? What did you do? And that's where we get to model, right? I'm showing you my pain, and I'm showing you some tips to addressing that pain. Ask me questions and I'll help you, but you're on your own. Does it make sense?
Yes, because right now I'm only in the listening mode.
Yeah.
I can't let her know about my experiences or anything. She isn't letting me. So I'm just staying in that listening.
Well, you know, I would imagine, I'm just saying this, and I'm not a psychotherapist, so I just want to put that out there. But I think that there's a time when people get tired and then they start to listen. If you love them, if they know you love them unconditionally, if they have a sense that you do not love them, then they're not going to come back to you with anything. They need a trusting place, but they also need to talk to people with similar experience. Because what they're doing is they're crying out for help, right? And if they're sharing that with you, you are a beacon of assistance. They just can't get there, and then you're not able to because you don't have the tools necessarily as a therapist would. But a therapist may not be able to do it either. But I think sometimes a good friend, a good listener is a good therapist.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Richard, I just can't say how much I appreciate all the wisdom you're sharing. I'm going to take these lessons back with me and put them to use in my life. Thank you so much for what you just said. Spoke to me. Rosa, I see your hand is up.
Richard, would you share it about how you reconcile being Catholic, a Roman Catholic, and being gay and being an activist too? Reminds me when I first started out in speaking and becoming familiar and advocating in the gay community. My children's father was gay. He died from HIV/AIDS. And my two daughters are lesbian. And so, you know, the question comes up, why are you Catholic? How do you reconcile what the Catholic Church teaches? Why are you still Catholic? I just ended up telling people what I grew up with. Vale más una onza de madre que una libra de sacerdote.
Yeah, that's so true, Rosa. I appreciate that. You know, I really do appreciate that. You know, I just think that I also have to say that there's a lot of bigotry towards Catholics. And among gay people, I hear, you know, you know, I find sometimes when people attack the church, they're attacking my culture, because that's the way I was raised. That's part of who I am. So even if a Latino is Jewish, right? Many of them still have the Virgin Mary, the Virgin de Guadalupe in their household. And so it's culture, right? And so I just have to remind them, because I think that we don't preserve history. What the bigotry that we went through in this country against gay people. You know, the fact that you would walk into a gay bar in West Hollywood and get beaten up by the police, right? There's some horrible stories out there that took place throughout every community in this country. And so we had to start from somewhere, right? But for me, because I'm a political, everything, my mind is wired politically, I don't leave a space because of potential threat
Mhm.
or where someone feels that I'm not wanted. If anything, I stay steadfast and I stay there until the system changes.
Yeah.
That's and that's, as a Catholic, I have to be political.
And you're being kind with the way you say it. I've told people that for me, I'm an educated Catholic woman who's not going to shut up, and I'm not going anywhere.
That's
You
right.
can excommunicate me, but you'll have to drag me out of the building.
Mhm.
And I've told those that I come into contact with who are gay, LGBTQ, and who are starving for the spirituality that they feel they are not welcome to in the Catholic Church. Don't confuse the institution for the core teachings and
That's
beliefs,
right. That's right.
because they can be very different. And my last word, in case you don't speak Spanish, I don't want to be rude. What I wrote down translate as, there's more value in an ounce of mother than in a pound of priest.
That's right. You know, I also want to share that when we go to the cathedral, my partner and I, we sit in the front row on the side of the church. And so those are our seats. And when we're not there, we'll have the Eucharistic minister saying, well, we missed you. Where were you? And many times we have the conservative archbishop saying mass, you know, and who's Opus Dei. When it comes to the sign of peace, we always kiss on the lips, my partner and I. And so people are, you do that? I says, yeah, what is he going to do? No one will run me away from my faith or my church.
Yep.
Well, you know, eventually we'll run them out. No, it's true.
Or get them to come out of the closet.
Yeah. But some of them, you don't want them to come out of the closet. They can stay there. But you know, but that's focusing on those who on the weakness of the church. But we have incredible priests and nuns and religious that are so supportive. You know, we started the Latino men's group years ago to provide support to gay Latino men, and it's been an amazing. It was an amazing. I'm writing about this now, because so many of these men are so powerful today. And we talk about Eddie Martinez, but we also talk about Ruben. We talk about Joaquin Tamayo and Ruben Gonzalez, who met at the men's group in Highland Park. They're a power couple in Washington. Ruben works for the White House, and Joaquin works for the Department of Education. So there are a lot of great stories, but in those meetings, I had Catholic priests coming to the men's group. And Father Brian had, during the scandal, when the height of the scandal, the molestation scandal, Father Brian had heard that the cardinal wanted some support for the gay priests. But obviously that was very closed, you know, it wasn't public. But the cardinal was very aware that the gay priests were suffering during this entire period of time. And Father Brian was the cardinal's person to the deaf community, his liaison. And so we almost provided formal support to the priests. But I think, again, it goes to leadership. You know, we need the right leaders, and we got to pray for it. And we got to pray that the good leaders stay around and stay alive so that they can make the decisions that could change the trajectory of where any church is going to.
Yeah. And my prayer is also for all those who are hungry, spiritually hungry,
Yes.
that they realize there's nothing wrong with you. There's a lot of wrong out in the world.
Yeah.
And if it's for the Catholic Church that you hunger, be aware that there is something important called the primacy of conscience.
Mm-hmm.
And that supersedes even the Pope. So start there.
That's right. I love that. Thank you, Rosa. And see, more people need to know that. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I don't see any other questions, but I see one. Okay. Rick, go ahead, please.
Yep. Just a quick thing. I'm glad that you talked about the importance of being true to your faith, and seeing through the prejudices that you might encounter. That the uncle that I was talking about, he and his partner, now husband, were very involved in the church that they were part of in Reseda, and leaders, and now they live in Rancho Palos Verdes, up north. A few of their friends moved into the area. I called it a little cult conclave, but instead of a freaky ideological thing, I think they moved near a friend of theirs who's running a winery. So it's a good place for them. I wanted to ask you, because I was really surprised with what you guys did with Strikeout AIDS, and how it was received on the nights that I was there at Dodger Stadium. I was totally expecting, in a community where the majority of people that go to Dodger games are Chicano and Hispanic, that it would be something that I wouldn't really want to be in the middle of hearing. But I hear standing ovations and stuff like that. I wanted to see how, if you have a story about how you negotiated that and how you were able to get the team and the community to get on board.
Thank you for the question. I'll give you two examples real quick. First of all, going back to Strikeout AIDS, I'm a big, as Rick is, I'm a big Dodger fan. And when I was at Cathedral High School, a junior, the O'Malleys would always let Cathedral know that there were jobs open. And so I sold programs in those days when I was a junior, and the programs were 25 cents at the time. So it was a long time ago. And so I've always been, and I always thought that in, talking about HIV/AIDS to the gay community is a given. But in our communities, you have to go beyond the queer community, the gay LGBTQ community. You need to go out to the general community to provide awareness. So we came up with the idea of Strikeout AIDS, which would basically, we would sell. So I approached the Dodgers and didn't get very far initially. And then I met this woman, Lisa Johnson, who was in group sales. And she goes, "Oh, my uncle died of AIDS. I want to help you." She says, the way to do it is you got to sell group tickets, because the Dodgers will listen if you sell tickets. So it's okay. So our first event was called Strikeout AIDS Latino Celebrity Challenge. And we had a bunch of celebrity Latinos on the field before the Dodger game. It was not a good event, but we had some folks there. We had the cast of different shows, and so we eventually built up that event. And on the height of Strikeout AIDS at Dodger Stadium, we had sold that one year 3,000 tickets, and we filled the entire right field pavilion. And right before the game, we would march out about 300 people onto the field, and we would form an AIDS ribbon. So everybody wore a red t-shirt, and then we gave them a red umbrella, and then they would open up the red umbrella. And that one year when we sold so many tickets, the front row coming out, I had ministers, I had cholitos, like big cholitos, I had drag queens, I had Catholic nuns. They all walked out with an umbrella, and it created a safety net for the audience. And but the first time was really truly a blessing. As we started hosting Strikeout AIDS at Dodger Stadium, I would have access to a singer. I would bring the singer in, and they would sing the national anthem. And the first event we ever did, I was scared. I was so scared of the repercussions. And the singer got up and they announced Strikeout AIDS. And I saw predominantly older traditional white people sitting at home plate, the season ticket holders. And when they announced Strikeout AIDS and what it was all about, they were the first to stand up and applause. And so we hit a home run. And we did that for about 15 years. And we brought a greater awareness, and we brought in people like Andre Ethier and Jaime Jorge Harin and other folks as their honorary chairs, and they would do a video recording. And so I love challenge. And we did the same thing with Major League Soccer. Prior to the LA Football Club, there was the Chivas USA. And so they, a Major League Soccer club, and I said, okay, we need to get people tested. So I went to them, I says, can one of your players come to our office in Highland Park and take an HIV test, and then we'll have a press conference. And they came back, says, well, we can't do that. We'll have to check with Major League Soccer. So they contacted Major League Soccer, so they say, and they came back and they said, well, no, they won't allow us to do that. Oh, I said, well, who did you talk to? I'll talk to them. So then they said, well, wait a minute, we'll get back to you. So they came back a few days later and says, okay, we'll be able to do 2 players to take the test. So they came to the Highland Park office. This is the first time and this has ever happened. And they came to our office, they took a test, and when they came out to the steps, they talked, and we had a press conference, and they talked about their experience and the need to take an HIV test. And it was so powerful. One was an African-American player, amazing gentleman. He lost his uncle to AIDS. And another one was a player from Mexico. And the Mexican player freaked out because right before after he took the test and he went out to the press, he was going to walk out to the press. He said in Spanish, give me a few moments. So he called. And then he went, and he says, oh, in Spanish, she was telling me, I had to call my wife. She's in Mexico, and she was going to find out about this. And I didn't want her to think that I was fooling around. I'm doing it for the community. And so, but there's always a first, and you got to find ways to break the ice and do what you got to do to create that message. But thank you for the question.
Sure. Thank you.
Hello, I just wanted to say, Richard, I was dealing with some of the people over in the county, and my concern was the rise of HIV amongst Latina women, specifically in the Pico Union area. So if you can just, in the future, keep that area in your mind.
Oh, I appreciate that, Sophia. I really do. And, you have so many good ideas. Any of you, please let me know when you're around and how you can, how we could provide updates to all of you regarding a number of these issues. We just had 2 huge town halls on the drug crisis. So we had our first one actually at a Catholic high school, Salesian High School, a month ago. We had over 300 people there to talk about the fentanyl, methamphetamine, crack, and opiates. And we also did another meeting in the city of Bell, where we had over 220 people there. And so we're doing a lot of awareness and education. So please let's connect so you can provide us your thoughts so we can better serve the community.
That's great. I also want to remind people, your email is in the chat. There's the email to the Wall Las Memorias, and obviously they can use your donations as well. And a couple of the events I put in the chat as well. So
yes.
I really appreciate you getting up this morning, and believe me, I know how powerful caffeine is and how it helps. So yeah, thank you very much for coming out, and we really appreciate you doing this. This is really good.
Well, Rick, I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for today, and thank you for your past support. Thank you for allowing me to be part of your program this Friday morning. If we were in person, I would love to hug each and every one of you. But I appreciate all what you do in the community. And I'm always here to support and to provide any guidance that you may need. So may God bless you, and continue to do what you do and do it well, and be well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. That was beautiful.
Thank you.